My name is Emily and I'm 33 years old. For as long as I can remember, my parents had a nickname for me. Not sweetheart. Not princess. Not even daughter. They called me the family servant. The worst part? At first, I thought it was a joke. Whenever relatives visited, my mother would smile and say, "Emily will take care of it. She's our little servant." Everyone laughed, including me. I was only 10. I didn't understand that some jokes become cages. As I got older, the nickname never disappeared. It only became more real. While my younger brother, Tyler, spent weekends with friends, I cleaned the house. While my older sister, Rachel, focused on college and parties, I cooked dinner. Every family holiday somehow became my responsibility. Set the table. Wash the dishes. Pick up groceries. Take grandma to appointments. Handle everything. And if I ever complained, my father would shake his head. "Stop being dramatic, Emily. You're the responsible one." Responsible. That word followed me everywhere. It sounded like praise, but it felt like a sentence. By the time I was in my 20s, I had become the person everyone depended on. When my father needed help with bills, he called me. When my mother wanted someone to run errands, she called me. When Tyler got into financial trouble, guess who fixed it? Me. Every time. No questions asked. I kept telling myself that family was supposed to help each other, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. Because help is supposed to go both ways. In our family, it never did. The moment that finally opened my eyes happened 3 years before everything exploded. I had just gotten promoted at work. It was the biggest achievement of my career. I was excited, proud. For once, I wanted my parents to be proud too, so I invited everyone to dinner. I paid for the restaurant. I bought a nice dress. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I would be celebrated instead of used. But halfway through the meal, my brother announced he was thinking about starting a business. Immediately, all attention shifted to him. My promotion disappeared from the conversation like it had never happened. Then my mother laughed and said something that cut deeper than she realized. "Emily will probably help pay for it. She always takes care of everyone." The table laughed. Again. Just like when I was 10, I smiled because that's what I always did. But inside, something cracked. And that crack would eventually lead to a gift. A gift containing one sentence. One sentence that would silence an entire room and force my parents to face a truth they had ignored for years. After that dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about my mother's words. "Emily will probably help pay for it." She had said it so casually, so naturally, as if my money, my time, and my life automatically belonged to everyone else. For weeks, that sentence replayed in my head. At first, I tried convincing myself I was overreacting. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. Maybe I was being sensitive. But the more I looked at my life, the harder it became to ignore the truth. I wasn't being treated like a daughter. I was being treated like a resource, a backup plan, someone whose purpose was to make everyone else's life easier. The realization hurt more than I can explain. Because I loved my family. I really did. I wasn't keeping score. I never wanted repayment. I just wanted appreciation, respect, a little acknowledgement that my sacrifices mattered. But the months that followed only made things worse. Tyler's business idea quickly turned into a financial disaster. One evening, my father called me. "Your brother needs help." I already knew what was coming. "How much?" There was a brief silence. Then he told me, $15,000. I nearly dropped my phone. "Dad, that's a lot of money." "You're doing well," he replied. Family helps family. There it was again, the family rule that somehow only applied to me. When Tyler needed money, family helps family. When mom needed errands, family helps family. When dad needed favors, family helps family. But whenever I needed support, the rule mysteriously disappeared. For the first time in my life, I said no. A simple word, 2 letters. No. The reaction was immediate. My father became cold. My mother stopped calling for nearly 2 weeks. Tyler acted as if I had betrayed him. It was unbelievable, not because I refused, but because one refusal erased years of sacrifice. Years! Thousands of dollars, countless hours, endless favors. Apparently, none of it mattered. The second I stopped giving, I became the villain. That realization changed something inside me. For the first time, I started setting boundaries. Small ones at first. I stopped dropping everything whenever someone called. I stopped solving problems that weren't mine. I stopped apologizing for having my own life. And my family hated it. Every boundary I created was treated like an attack. My mother would sigh dramatically. "You've changed." My father would shake his head. "You used to care about this family." Even Rachel joined in. "You've become selfish." Selfish. That word almost made me laugh. After spending most of my life serving everyone else, I was selfish because I finally protected myself. The irony was painful. But despite everything, I stayed polite. I never argued. I never exposed them. I simply stepped back, and that made them angrier than any confrontation ever could. Then came the event that changed everything. My parents announced their 40th wedding anniversary celebration. It was going to be a huge gathering. Relatives from several states were flying in. Family friends would be there. Everyone was excited, including my parents. For months, they talked about nothing else. Then one afternoon, my mother called. "Emily, we need your help." Of course they did. I listened as she listed everything they expected me to do. Help organize the venue, coordinate decorations, handle invitations, manage guest arrivals, basically become an unpaid event planner. By the time she finished, I felt exhausted. She never once asked if I was available. She simply assumed, just like always. When she finally paused, I calmly said something she wasn't expecting. "No." Silence. A long silence. Then she laughed. Actually laughed, as if she thought I was joking. But I wasn't. "I'm not doing that this time." The laughter disappeared immediately. Her voice hardened. "What do you mean? I mean, Rachel and Tyler can help too." Another silence. Then came the guilt, the disappointment, the manipulation. Everything I had heard my entire life, but this time, it didn't work. For the first time, I stood my ground. The conversation ended badly. Very badly. A few days later, I discovered something that hurt even more. Rachel and Tyler were telling relatives that I had become arrogant because of my career success. According to them, I thought I was better than the family now. I couldn't believe it. The woman who spent years helping everyone was suddenly being painted as selfish because she finally said no. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and cried. Not because they were angry, not because they misunderstood me, but because I finally accepted something I had been avoiding for years. They didn't actually know me. They knew what I could do for them. And there was a difference, a huge difference. For hours, I looked through old photographs, birthdays, Christmases, family vacations. In nearly every picture, I remembered being the one behind the scenes. Cooking, cleaning, organizing, serving, always serving. That's when an idea began forming in my mind. Not out of revenge, not at first, out of truth. If my parents wanted a perfect anniversary celebration, I would attend. I would smile. I would be respectful. And I would bring them a gift, a very special gift. One that contains something far more valuable than money, far more powerful than an expensive present. It contained the truth. The truth I had spent decades swallowing. The truth nobody in that family wanted to hear. And hidden inside that gift was a single opening line. Just one sentence. A sentence that would completely change the anniversary celebration and leave. Every person in that room staring at me in stunned silence. The day of my parents' 40th wedding anniversary finally arrived. For weeks, I had been thinking about that gift. Not because it was expensive. It wasn't. In fact, compared to what some people spend on milestone anniversaries, it cost almost nothing. But emotionally, it was priceless and terrifying. I had rewritten it dozens of times. Every sentence, every memory, every word, because this wasn't about embarrassing my parents. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about finally telling the truth. A truth I had buried for most of my life. The celebration was being held at a beautiful country club just outside the city. When I arrived, the parking lot was already full. Relatives I hadn't seen in years were hugging each other. People were laughing. Music was playing. Everything looked perfect. Exactly the kind of event my parents loved. The kind where everyone admired them. The kind where appearances mattered more than reality. As I walked inside carrying the gift box, my stomach tightened. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave. Part of me wanted to throw the gift in the trash. Part of me wanted to stay silent forever, because silence had always been safer. Then I remembered every holiday I spent cleaning while everyone else celebrated, every paycheck I sacrificed, every insult disguised as a joke, every time I was called the family servant. And I kept walking. The ballroom was stunning. Golden lights hung from the ceiling. Fresh flowers decorated every table. A giant photo display showcased my parents' lives together. Guests kept stopping to admire it. My mother was glowing with happiness. My father looked proud. Rachel and Tyler were moving around the room, acting like they had organized everything. The irony almost made me laugh. Most of the relatives who praised them had no idea how little either of them had contributed. But I said nothing. I smiled. I greeted everyone politely, and I waited. Hours passed. Dinner was served. Speeches began. Friends shared stories. Relatives told funny memories. Everyone talked about what wonderful parents my mother and father were. Each compliment felt like a tiny stone landing in my chest, not because they were completely false. My parents weren't monsters. That's what made everything so complicated. They were generous to strangers, kind to neighbors, helpful to friends, but somehow, when it came to me, they expected endless sacrifice, and they never noticed the damage it caused. As the evening continued, I kept staring at the gift box near my chair. My heart pounded every time I looked at it. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The master of ceremonies announced that guests could now present anniversary gifts. People lined up. Some offered expensive watches. Others gave vacation packages. One family presented a custom painting. The crowd applauded each gift. Then my name was called. For a brief second, I couldn't move. Every eye in the room seemed to turn toward me. I stood, picked up the box, and slowly walked to the front. The microphone suddenly felt enormous. My hands were shaking. My father smiled. My mother looked pleased. They probably expected jewelry. Or another generous check. After all, that's what I usually gave. Something useful. Something practical. Something that required me to give while asking for nothing in return. My father took the box. "Thank you, sweetheart," he said. The audience smiled. I swallowed hard. "Please open it now." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. My mother seemed surprised. "Right now?" I nodded. "Yes." The room grew curious. My father carefully removed the ribbon. Then he opened the lid. Inside wasn't jewelry. There wasn't any expensive gift at all. Instead, there was a beautifully bound book, a simple hardcover book. The title printed on the front read, "40 Years of Family." Several guests leaned forward. My mother smiled again. "Oh, how thoughtful." She opened it. The first few pages contained family photographs, childhood pictures, holiday memories, birthday celebrations. The audience relaxed. People assumed it was a sentimental scrapbook. Exactly as I intended. My parents began flipping through the pages. Then they reached the section I had carefully created, a section titled, "The Daughter Who Served." My father's smile faded slightly. My mother's eyes narrowed. The room became quieter. She turned the page, and there it was. The sentence, the first line, the line I had spent weeks rewriting, the line that carried 30 years of pain, the line that changed everything. My mother read it silently. Then her face froze. My father leaned closer. His expression changed instantly. Neither of them spoke. The room was so quiet that I could hear silverware clinking across the ballroom. A few relatives exchanged confused looks. Someone whispered, "What does it say?" My parents still didn't answer. Their eyes remained locked on the page. For the first time in my life, they looked completely speechless. The sentence read, "To the family I spent 30 years serving. This is the story of the daughter you never truly saw. No accusations, no insults, no screaming, just the truth. Simple, direct, impossible to ignore." The silence felt endless. My mother blinked several times. My father swallowed hard. Then they continued reading. Page after page, memory after memory. Every chapter documented moments I had never discussed publicly. The time I postponed my own vacation to pay Tyler's debts. The years I spent caring for Grandma while everyone else was too busy. The countless holidays I cooked, cleaned, and organized. The promotions nobody celebrated. The birthdays forgotten. The sacrifices dismissed as expectations. Nothing was exaggerated. Every story was true. Every detail was documented. Every memory was real. As they turned pages, I watched relatives slowly realize what they were reading. The atmosphere in the room changed. The laughter disappeared. The conversations stopped. People began noticing the tears forming in my mother's eyes. The shock on my father's face. Rachel looked nervous. Tyler suddenly couldn't make eye contact with anyone. Then my aunt quietly asked, "Is all of this true?" Nobody answered, because they knew that's what made it powerful. Not anger, not drama. Truth. Pure truth. My father eventually reached a chapter that included a list, a very long list. Every major financial contribution I had made to family members over the years. Dates. Amounts. Reasons. The room seemed stunned. Several relatives looked directly at Tyler. Others stared at Rachel. Neither of them said a word. I wasn't exposing secrets. I was exposing patterns. Patterns everyone had ignored. Patterns that suddenly became impossible to miss. Then my mother reached another page. A page that hit her harder than anything else. It contained a collection of family quotes. Comments people had made over the years. Comments I had written down after hearing them repeatedly. Among them was one sentence. A sentence spoken by my mother countless times. "Emily will take care of it." The quote appeared again and again, across birthdays, holidays, family emergencies, special occasions. Dozens of times, page after page. My mother's shoulders slowly slumped, because for the first time, she could actually see it. Not as individual moments, as a lifetime, and somehow seeing them together made the truth impossible to deny. The ballroom remained silent. No music, no laughter, no conversations, only pages turning. Then my father finally looked up. His eyes met mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see emotions fighting behind his expression. Shock, confusion, regret, pain, maybe even guilt. But before he could say a single word, he turned to the next page. And what he saw there made his face go completely pale, because that page contained the final message I had written before the ending. A message neither of my parents expected. A message that was about to force them to confront the consequences of 30 years of taking me for granted. And when that page was read aloud, the entire room would witness a moment nobody would ever forget. The ballroom was completely silent. No one touched their food. No one checked their phones. No one even seemed to breathe. My father stared at the page in front of him. My mother sat frozen beside him. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought I would feel victorious. I thought I would feel angry, maybe even satisfied. Instead, I felt strangely calm, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the truth alone. Everyone could see it now. Everyone could see what my role in the family had really been. My father slowly lifted his eyes from the book. "Emily." His voice cracked. It was the first time I had ever heard him sound uncertain. Then he looked back down at the page. The message he had just read was simple. I spent years trying to earn love by being useful. The saddest part is that I never realized I should have been loved even when I had nothing left to give. Several people lowered their heads. A few relatives wiped away tears. My mother's hands were trembling. She kept staring at those words as if she wanted to deny them but couldn't, because deep down, she knew they were true. The next page contained my final letter. Not a letter of revenge. Not a letter of hatred. A letter of honesty. My father cleared his throat. "Do you want me to read this?" I nodded. The room remained silent. He began reading. "Mom and Dad, for most of my life, I believed my value came from what I could do for other people. I believed being needed was the same thing as being loved. Every time someone asked for help, I said yes. Every time someone depended on me, I showed up. Not because I was forced to, because I wanted to make my family proud. I wanted to matter. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being your daughter and became your solution. Whenever there was a problem, I fixed it. Whenever there was work, I did it. Whenever there was sacrifice, it was expected from me. And because I loved you, I accepted it. What hurts is realizing that most of it went unnoticed." My father's voice grew weaker. The room was completely still. He continued, "I am not writing this letter to punish you. I am writing it because I need you to understand what 30 years felt like from my side. Every joke about me being the family servant became a belief. Eventually, I stopped asking for recognition because I assumed I didn't deserve it. I convinced myself that giving everything was normal. It wasn't. I deserved appreciation. I deserved support. I deserved to be seen." My father stopped reading. He removed his glasses. For a moment, he couldn't continue. I had never seen him emotional in public. Never. But his eyes were filled with tears. My mother was crying openly now. Not dramatic tears. Not attention-seeking tears. The kind that come when a painful truth finally breaks through years of denial. After a long pause, my father continued, "The reason I created this book isn't because I want an apology, it's because I want a different future. I don't want another holiday where my worth depends on what I contribute. I don't want another family gathering where everyone assumes I'll handle everything. I don't want to spend the rest of my life earning a place in a family where I already belong. I am your daughter, not your servant." The final sentence echoed through the room. Then silence. Complete silence. My father closed the book. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. For several seconds, it felt as if time itself had stopped. Then something happened that I never expected. My father stood up. Slowly, without saying a word, he walked toward me. The entire room watched. I honestly didn't know what he was going to do. Part of me still feared rejection. Part of me expected anger. Instead, he stopped directly in front of me and hugged me tightly. For a second, I froze. My father wasn't a man who showed emotion. Growing up, hugs were rare. Affection was rare. Yet there he was, holding me while tears rolled down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. 3 words. Just 3 words, but they carried 30 years of weight. I felt my own tears begin to fall. Then he stepped back. My mother stood next. She walked over with tears streaming down her face. The moment she reached me, she started crying even harder. "I didn't see it," she said. I honestly didn't see it. There was no defensiveness in her voice. No excuses. No blame. Only regret. And somehow that made it even more emotional. Because I believed her. Not because she was innocent, but because people can hurt someone deeply without fully realizing the damage they're causing. She grabbed my hands. "Every time I said you'd take care of something, I thought I was complimenting you." I nodded. "I know." She cried harder, but I never asked what it was costing you. That sentence hit me harder than anything else, because that was exactly the problem. Nobody had asked. Not for years. The rest of the family sat quietly. Even Rachel looked ashamed. Even Tyler couldn't hide his guilt anymore. Then something unexpected happened. My aunt stood up, then another relative, then another. One by one, family members began sharing things they had noticed over the years. Small things, moments they remembered, sacrifices they had witnessed, acts of kindness they had never properly acknowledged. For the first time in my life, people weren't talking about what I had done for them. They were talking about me, who I was, how much I had given, how much I had mattered. And for the first time, I allowed myself to hear it. Not dismiss it, not minimize it, actually hear it. That night didn't magically erase the past. Real life doesn't work that way. One emotional conversation can't repair decades of unhealthy patterns. But it can start something. And that night started to change. Over the following months, my family behaved differently. Not perfectly, but differently. When holidays came around, responsibilities were shared. When problems appeared, everyone participated. When Tyler needed help, he handled it himself. When Rachel volunteered for family events, nobody looked at me. And perhaps most importantly, people stopped calling me the family servant. Forever. The nickname disappeared, never spoken again. Months later, my mother invited me to dinner. Just the two of us. At one point, she looked across the table and smiled. You know what I realized?
What?
She reached for my hand. For years, I kept telling everyone how dependable you were. I laughed softly.
Yeah.
She shook her head. But I should have been telling everyone how loved you were. I couldn't speak for several seconds, because that was all I had ever wanted. Not money, not gifts, not praise, just love without conditions. Love that wasn't earned through sacrifice. Love that existed simply because I was their daughter. Today, when I look back on that anniversary night, I don't remember the shock. I don't remember the silence. I don't even remember the tears. What I remember is freedom. The freedom that came from finally telling the truth. The freedom that came from refusing to shrink myself for other people's comfort. The freedom that came from realizing my value was never tied to how much I could give. And if there's one thing I learned from the entire experience, it's this. The people who love you should never require you to prove your worth over and over again. Because real love doesn't treat you like a servant. Real love sees you. And after 33 years, my family finally did. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the family servant. I was simply their daughter, and that was more than enough. Which country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories.